Hello everyone, what's up? Prince Dean here with another episode review of The Acolyte. So today we are taking a look at the fourth episode. Before we get started, I do want to apologize in advance because I'm recording this so I don't know. But if you hear music in the background, I apologize for that. It's my dad working from home and he is blasting music on the speaker system while he works. So I apologize if you can pick that up in the background. Hopefully it's not too distracting. Anyway, so episode 4 of The Acolyte, which it seems every week we trudge forward, more and more people are getting up in arms about small, minute details that ultimately do not matter. Star Wars fans are fun. But so ignoring all that for right now, what do I think of this episode? I have some issues with this one. Just from I think one thing I've officially decided about this show is I do think that the pacing of this show is pretty bad so far, because the first 2 episodes set up what I think is a compelling enough mystery, not necessarily around who's murdering the Jedi, because we know that, but who the Acolyte is, who the dark side master is. Is it the Sith? Is it another offshoot, another dark side religion? There's all these questions that are yet to be answered, and I think it's set up a compelling mystery. Then episode 3 kind of ignores all of that to give us a flashback. And last week I was kind of like, I don't know if that was the right choice for the pacing, but we're going to have to move forward and see and wait and see. Now, and next week I could change my tune again, because that's the way things work on weekly releases like this. But as of right now, I'm kind of sitting here going, I think it was a big mistake to make that 3rd episode be an entire flashback episode and not cut it up and sprinkle it in throughout other episodes. Partially because of how this episode turned out. So this episode was kind of a whole lot of nothing. I even hesitate to call it setup, because part ones and part twos and leaving us on cliffhangers and stuff, that is nothing new for television. Television's been doing that for decades. But usually there's interesting things and some substance in the part ones before, the cliffhanger happens. This, I don't really think had much in there. I mean, there was like a little bit of stuff with Osha not really sure if she can face May again, and kind of being wishy-washy there, and it's like, why is she there? It's I don't know, maybe I missed it, but I feel like the need to bring her along was stated clearly, and then it was denied. Like, no, that's not why we want her. Because Saul was talking with Green Lady Jedi Master, and she was like, well, these other people are going to go take care of it. And he's like, well, I want to do it. Because the only way she's going to come peacefully is if we give her something, if we give May something she wants. And at first it's like, well, she's going to want you because she wants revenge on you. And then the scene cuts, and then a little while later we find Osha in the hallway, and she's like, well, I'm the reason. I'm the reason I'm the thing that she'll want, right? And I only watched this episode like an hour ago, and already I'm fuzzy on details. So clearly this episode did not stick with me very well. So I think that's maybe also something to say for how this isn't turning out exactly great so far. But yeah, so far I'm kind of questioning why they're bringing her along, other than just because the plot demands it. Like, I'm not sure they've really thought of a great reason to bring her along. Like, you're the only thing May's going to want, so we need to bring you along to make sure she's not hurt. See, I understood that, but then it seems like they've kind of almost gone out of their way to say that's not the reason, and it's like, oh no, this is going to be a lesson for you so you can face your past or something. It's like, hasn't she already done that? sort of kind of in the second episode, and then but I mean, if you capture her, then you could have her. Then and you have May in jail. Then you could have OSHA face her past that way, in a secure environment and not in the middle of a deadly jungle. Okay, so yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. That's maybe one of those things I need to rewatch and pay closer. I thought I was paying close attention. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just being stupid, and I didn't understand. And I'm getting myself too confused. But like I said, like a lot of this episode, just like okay, they're walking, and at one point I thought, okay, now we're gonna have an action scene to kind of liven things up here, and all the bugs are gonna wake up on the trees, and then Soul slices the one in half, and they're like, all right, we're good, let's continue. It's like, huh? Okay, so we're not having an action scene. Got it. That seemed a little weird. Now that it could be that could come back into play next episode, and then that'll be fine. But if that never comes back, then I'm going to be like, okay, because she does the whole. Because I understand that scene from the point of view of she connected with the creature, and she's like, oh, hold on, I'm kind of beginning to feel a little more one with the Force here, and beginning to sense things for the first time in a while. And clearly that has something to do with her reconnection with her sister. It's making her Force powers stronger. Going to be interesting if they pull a Force dyad thing here, going back to Rise of Skywalker and delving more into that, because I think that could make sense that Osha and May are Force dyad, being clones created straight from midichlorians, we assume. Again, went over that last review. So I understand the scene with the bugs on the trees from that point of view, but then they lead it up to it seeming like it's going to be this action sequence, and then it's not. It's very, very underwhelming. You could have done that with any other animal and not teed up an action sequence that never happened. So that, I think that's weird. So if next episode they're like, they're in retreat because the Sith Master or whoever Mr. Redblade is, TV Mask, has just carved his way through most of the Jedi, and all the red shirts that have no names as far as we know, and then our named characters are retreating and running back through the Force, and they have to fight their way through the bugs, then that's fine. Then it's like, okay, I understand why you set that up, because it was going to happen in the very next episode. So we'll have to wait and see. But if the next episode has nothing to do with those bugs, I'm like, that was weird. Why'd you set that up if you weren't going to do anything with it? Because the setup was done really well, I thought, where it's like, oh, what are these things on the trees? And Osha touches one, and then it scurries away. It's like, it's a bug. They're all bugs. They're in a forest full of all these creepy, crawly bug flying things. And, oh, gosh, this could get real scary real fast. I mean, it's like, because, you could identify, oh, my gosh, they're on, like, all of these trees. I think that, that's a pretty good show, don't tell, slowly explaining the danger they're in. And then nothing happens. Weird. That's a weird misstep. Again, if they don't do anything with the next episode. If they do something with it next episode, then I revoke my little critique there. But yeah, so we'll see. Because I don't think we've seen all too much more from trailers and stuff. Like, I know in the trailers there's like a shot of them flying through an asteroid field or something, and like having a there's a laser battle in the middle of like an asteroid belt or something. And of course there's snippets of the fight that we're assuming happens in the beginning moments of the next episode, unless the next episode is again a 30-minute flashback, which I don't know. Who knows at this point? Maybe they'd actually do that. Hopefully not. Because if so, then it's like, okay, you people have no idea how to pace your television shows. So hopefully next episode is, the fight. But yeah, other than like the asteroid field chase and then the fight in the forest, what we're presuming to be in the next episode, yeah, well, I don't think there's a whole lot more from the trailers that we've seen, which I like. It means that there's less of a way for us to figure out what's going to happen. So we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, I mean that's yeah. I suppose the one big like significant moment in this episode is May realizing, well, hold on, my whole motivation for for wanting revenge on the Jedi is kind of moot now because my sister's alive. They didn't kill her. So I don't actually want to go down this dark path anymore because I actually have something to live for back in the light. I liked that. It's it, so we so it at least right now it seems like this isn't going to end with a twin versus twin lightsaber fight at the or force fight or whatever at the end of the show, and that's our big finale. I think it's being made pretty clear that May is not the overall, she is not the bad guy. She has been kind of coerced into doing this based on her trauma, and someone is using her, and she's kind of she's been doing bad things, but I think by the end of the season maybe she's going to be a dual protagonist with Osha. So if that's the case and that's what's going to happen, then there's some good development for her this episode. Now, I wish they had been a little more subtle with it, because she does just kind of come right out and blurt it and say, on that big trek we just took, I just realized I don't have to do this. It's like, could have been nice to have a couple more scenes of like some introspection and in reflection from you about that. But okay. Let's see, and this is where I think it would have been good to have put some of those flashbacks from episode 3 in. Like some of the happier moments of May and Osha as kids. Put that in. Have May and who I'm assuming is Red Blade. It's at this point it's like he's being too weird. It's and almost like too. It's like I'm too suspicious of this guy. I feel like he's really her master. Because she's like, oh, I've never seen his face. It's like, well, what? Why have you been here before? What are you doing? And it's like in his employ. It's like, what do you owe him? It's like, oh, he just collects people as he does. You know him, and so it's like, I think he's being too weird. I'm pretty sure that he's gonna be, unless the next episode we see him get his foot unstuck out of that tree and he walks into the middle of the big fight. He's like, hey guys, what's going on? And as everyone's killing each other, then I'm like, oh hey, shoot, it's not him. I have seen some people say that maybe Red Blade is Mother Zabrak from the flashback in the last episode, but I don't know. Red Blade seems too small in stature, because stood right next to May and wasn't too much taller, and Mother Zabrak from the last episode didn't strike me as being really that short. So I don't think it's her. I think it's an interesting theory, and there would be some good story stuff to back that up, but I don't think it's her. So anyway, yeah, they're on that trek and everything. I think it would have been good, it's like to have them walking and then to have her flash back and see some of the stuff from the last episode and intersplice that throughout the other episodes, and so we get slowly drip fed a lot of the behind, the backstory and what happened, and we get more of it naturally that way, instead of it being all forced down our throats at once in an entire week dedicated to the flashback. And I still think that what we saw in that last episode isn't all completely true, and there's going to be revelations about that. But I mean, even then, you can still have some of those flashbacks and then show more flashbacks from the different perspective to eventually unveil the lie. So yeah, I'm not sure that the editing is that really that strong in this series, and I don't think the pacing is very good either. I'm still giving them a round of applause for their production values in terms of their sets and their costumes. I think the visual effects are pretty good. Because I don't know if I can't remember if I said this or not, but like back in my Kenobi review for the Obi-Wan series, I didn't think the effects were very good in that. There were, especially like a lot of the landing shots on planets and stuff. I felt like a lot of that looked like it was out of Clone Wars, which, for an animated TV series, yeah, it looks good and it's stylistic and it looks really good. But you can't take visual effects from the Clone Wars and plop them into a live action series and expect it to mesh, because, well, one's stylized animation, the other is supposed to look lifelike. So I feel like Kenobi suffered from a lot of that. But I'm not having the same feeling with the Acolyte. The like the ships flying by and the exteriors and the establishing shots and stuff, and looking at Coruscant and all these different planets. All of this is looking really good to me. I think the budget has definitely been well spent in the effects and production department in that sense. So yeah. Yeah, there just wasn't a whole lot else in this episode. Like I said, it was just kind of a lot. This was clearly all set up for the next episode, and I'm not sure that it was really after what we saw in this episode, because if this were episode 3, and then we get the fight in episode, and if this were episode 3 and they'd sprinkled in some of the flashbacks instead of keeping it all to one episode, and then maybe next week, then we get some more flashbacks with the fight and everything, and they just continue doing that, then I don't think I'd necessarily have a problem with how this episode played out. But coming off of a week of kind of derailing the plot to give us the flashback, and then coming back and it just being set up for the big fight next week, I feel like that for 2 weeks we've been spinning our wheels and we haven't been going anywhere with this story for the show. I feel like there has been very little plot progression since the first 2 episodes. I think it would have made more sense if this is really going to be the overall. This is what is going to work best for the overall pacing of the show with how they are planning out their story. Then the release needed to be different. So have episode 1 come out on its own. I think the way the first episode ends is compelling enough, where we get just enough of, it's like, because it's an open and closed story. You have the framing of Osha, the death of a Jedi. She's on the run. It's not really on the run. She's kind of inadvertently on the run. She's captured. She escapes the doomed ship. We're introduced to our main characters. They find her at the very end. They welcome her back, and Soul's like, "I know you're innocent. Let's go prove you're innocent." And then we see, and now that we realize that there's 2 of them, then we see May with her master, and he ignites the red blade. And then we hit credits. If that were the only episode they had put out for the premiere, then episode 2 comes out on its own, episode 3 comes out on its own, then they could double up 4 and 5. So that way you don't have to wait a week in between you don't have to wait a week in between all the setup and then the immediate, and then you could have the immediate payoff. Because it just feels because the way they have done it with 1 and 2 releasing back to back, and then 3, and then 4, it's like, okay, what are we doing, guys? Let's get moving a little bit here. But if they'd done 1 episode, 1 episode, 1 episode, 2 episodes, then I don't think the pacing would feel as bad. I don't know who's responsible for that. Like, is that the showrunners that say this is the cadence we want the show dropped at? Because if that's the case, and they've done a bad job at deciding what their cadence of their episodes needs to be, or is it Disney Plus corporate saying this is our schedule we have for all of our other shows we're managing? Not that they really have a whole lot of other Disney Plus originals going right now, which is smart because you don't want to distract from whatever show is on right now. And it's more like scheduling it out across the year and stuff. But yeah, so I'm wondering who is in charge, because it would not surprise me if Disney corporate just said, all right, you're getting your 2 episode premiere, and then the rest will come out weekly. And then maybe they said, I have to imagine the showrunners have input on when episodes are released. I have to imagine that's the case. Because, say, with Bad Batch, for instance, they doubled up several episodes. And they were always relevant to one another. And we didn't really have to wait a week in between things happening. with the exception of the last couple episodes leading into the finale, where they stretched that out a little bit, and that was fine because then we got an hour-long finale at the very end, and it all worked out. Spoilers for Bad Batch, by the way, if you haven't seen my Bad Batch reviews. Bad Batch is a good show. Go watch it. You can watch all my reviews. I've reviewed every episode. Using that as an example, because the season 3, the first 3 episodes came out, they were all relevant to one another. They were dealing with the immediate aftermath of season 2. And they didn't keep us waiting, and we saw Crosshair and Omega escape from Tantus, and then after that they started drip feeding it week to week. I thought that was really good. That it didn't bog the pacing down of the season, and it got a lot of unresolved answers from the end of the second season taken care of with pretty quick, and then it allowed us to chart new territory in the season going forward. So that the pacing there and their cadence of releases there was handled really well. So I have to imagine that the showrunners said to Disney, "Hey, when you're releasing these on Disney Plus, here is the order. We don't know what weeks. It's like release them when you're ready for them to be released but it's like when you do get ready to release them, put them in this order and release them in these batches." I have to imagine that they had to have had input to say stuff like that. And so then I'd have to imagine that likewise, probably the Acolyte showrunners are in the same boat where they get to say, here's the cadence these should drop at. So I don't know like I said, I don't know who's to blame with this, but I'm not sure if and who knows, maybe I'll change my tune by the time the whole series is done. We still got 4 more episodes to go. But so far, I'm like, I don't think this is paced well at all. But we'll see. So yeah, that's kind of my overall thoughts on the episode. And I think these are probably legitimate complaints to have about an episode, because now I want to talk about more of the meta, the meta-ness of this episode and the elephant in the room, just really quick. I'm not going to linger on it long, but just really quick. It's just some of the things that people are using to try to drag down the show and like to prove that Disney doesn't care about Star Wars and they're ruining it and stuff. And I just find it so funny that this week's target, because some of these detractors on YouTube seem to find like some new prime example every single week, and to try to drag down Lucasfilm and such. And their target this week is, of all people, Ki-Adi-Mundi. Who the heck has ever cared about Ki-Adi-Mundi? I'm sorry. It's like Ki-Adi-Mundi is one of the most background Jedi that have ever existed. He's not Yoda. He's not wise like Yoda. He doesn't have much of an attitude like Mace Windu. There's very, very little notable about him other than he survived the Battle of Geonosis and he was killed during Order 66. And then he was also mean to Ahsoka during her trial. Because Ki-Adi-Mundi is just, to me, I look at him and I go, this is one of the most blind Jedi to have ever lived, because he just kind of, Ki-Adi-Mundi is one of the most prime examples of stuck in their ways Jedi. This is the reason that the dark side was able to overtake them so easily. Jedi, because we see him in the Phantom Menace, and everyone likes to point to everyone's been pointing to but the Sith have been extinct for a millennium quote from him from the Phantom Menace. And it's like, oh, that's why the Acolyte doesn't make sense. It's like, show's not over. They're probably, it's like, who knows? Maybe the show's going to end and they're going to go, oh yeah, this guy wasn't a Sith. He was never a Sith. He was just a Darksider with a red blade. And it's like, okay. It's like, maybe they're going that direction. So people have pointed to that. Now he actually shows up in this episode, which I knew immediately, like, oh, that's Ki-Adi-Mundi. It's like, it has to be Ki-Adi-Mundi. It's, just the way he held him, he looked younger, but just the way he held himself, I'm like, oh, that's that. And then like the beard and everything, I'm like, this is most likely Ki-Adi-Mundi, and then the credits confirmed it. But then people are freaking out over the fact that, oh, he's not supposed to be born yet, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure. And then yeah, I double checked, like all that information about when he was born, what years he was active and stuff. All of that's from Legends. And as a fan of Legends myself, I've grew a lot of my foray into Star Wars after Revenge of the Sith and it came out, and Star Wars was quote unquote done. After that, I started getting into all the Legend stuff, reading the Republic Commando novels, the Thrawn trilogy, blah blah blah, reading these books and experiencing some of the Dark Horse comics at the time, and playing the video games and stuff, and really brushing up on a lot of the expanded universe before it was expunged in 2014. So yeah, as a fan of Legends myself, I know that it's still kind of annoying that some of that stuff was erased, but I know that it can also be confusing because for some things we have just been using the Legends details as quote unquote canon because there's just been nothing out to contradict those facts yet. So prior to this episode of The Acolyte, yeah, Ki-Adi-Mundi was born at this time. He was active at this point in the Jedi Order, and he was this age when he was killed in Revenge of the Sith. And depending on who you ask, he also had like 5 wives because the race he belongs to has a low male population. So he's like one of the exceptions to the rule about no attachments because he has to have wives so that way he can continue to try to repopulate the species. He's a special exception to that rule. So all those details are Legends, and so far there was nothing to contradict that until this episode where they go, oh, actually this is a species that does live longer. So this is like probably a middle-aged, late 40s, early 50s sort of kind of age range Ki-Adi-Mundi, and maybe he's more in his 70s or 80s by the time we get to the prequels. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And people are freaking out about this, like they suddenly changed Anakin Skywalker's name or something, and it's a huge contradiction. It's like, no, it's Ki-Adi-Mundi. Let's not freak out about a background character like Ki-Adi-Mundi. It's like, I didn't agree with it, but I understood people freaking out about the Solo and stuff from Solo. It's like Han Solo. It's like, good luck, Han, and all that. I kind of understood that because yeah, I can understand people thinking it's a little hokey and stuff. But it's like, it's Ki-Adi-Mundi. I'm sorry, in the large scheme of things, he is not a character that really matters. If anything, his inclusion here is just going to reinforce how stupid the Jedi are, and it's like, oh, gee, no wonder they let the dark side overtake them. Because, Green Jedi Master Lady said, we can't tell the High Council about this because then they would have to report it to the Senate. And then that would, sow fear and distrust in the Jedi and in the Senate and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, already you're too political just 100 years before The Phantom Menace, and you're not really acting the way Jedi should. And that's part of the problem. Is that you're too big and obtuse of an organization at this point. So we're just seeing more evidence of that there. So yeah. Also, I do find it funny going back to the whole people pointing out but the Sith have been extinct for a millennium and trying to say that the Acolyte is rewriting canon because of that. It's like Ki-Adi-Mundi is like every line of dialogue he has in the prequels is like false in some way. Okay, that's an exaggeration. Not every line. It's like, your thoughts dwell on your mother. It's like, well, yes, Anakin's thoughts, so that's not false. But a lot of things he says in the prequels end up being discredited because he's like, oh, this, Sith has been extinct for millenniums. Like, okay, then who the heck did I just fight on Tatooine? Conehead. It's like, oh, so who's gonna kill me in about another 45 minutes of movie runtime? It's like the Sith. And then at the beginning of Attack of the Clones, Padme survives her assassination attempt, and she's like, I think Count Dooku was behind this. And he says, Count Dooku is a political idealist, not a murderer. And then it's like, all right, let's smash cut to a supercut of every time Dooku either personally kills someone or gives the order for someone or someones, as in a group of people, to die. It's like, hey, Ki-Adi-Mundi, how about you ask Yaddle about that whole, he's not a murderer thing, just a political idealist? Because I think she would maybe disagree with that, but she's not there to tell you about all that because, Dooku killed her. like 10 years ago. So yeah. I anyway, so I just find the fact that people are freaking out so much about Ki-Adi-Mundi just kind of funny. And this is going to be one of those things where there's going to be some more there's going to be some Star Wars fans out there that are more casual, more novice, where it's like they like the movies and they watch the Disney Plus shows when they come on, but they don't like delve into the lore, know who every single character is and stuff like that. And when I say Disney Plus shows, I mean just the live action ones. Like they haven't watched Clone Wars or Rebels or Bad Batch or anything like that. Like they just watched Mandalorian and Ahsoka and stuff. And Ahsoka probably confused them a little bit, but like, yeah, okay, whatever. So it's like, so some of these people are probably seeing the name Ki-Adi-Mundi thrown around a whole bunch of like, who even is this person? So it's like, it's just getting to a level of semantics and nitpicking that I just have to roll my eyes and go, you guys don't have some of the people yelling about this clearly don't have a creative bone in their body to be complaining about this and to be treating canon as so stringent and so unbreakable. It's like if there is, and this is clearly what the rule Lucas lived by, is that if there's something established, you quote unquote established, but he can think of a better way to use that thing, but it's going to kind of change it a little bit, then he's still going to, but the opportunity's there, he's still going to take it and use it. For instance, Coruscant was something that Timothy Zahn came up for the Thrawn trilogy, and it was described very differently. And like, yeah, it was a city planet, but it clearly had like mountains and stuff. But then when Lucas introduced it in the prequel trilogy, it was all planet. Like you can only and then later was established that the only bit of actual ground that you could see was like, it was like a whole park. Like there's a whole actual mountaintop. Like the very tip top of the tallest mountain on the planet, and it's all been overcome by city. So that's a change. That's something he changed. I mean, it's like Lucas changed and ignored so much from the expanded universe. And even now, it's like, yes, I think canon is important to pay attention to, because it does help establish an overall tone for your story and your universe and everything. But you have to recognize that there are different levels of canonicity, and some things can be changed and quote unquote contradict, and it not actually really affect anything at all. Changing how old Ki-Adi-Mundi does not affect anything at all. Ki-Adi-Mundi's age has never had an impact in any story that has been told in Star Wars. And even with changing his age now, it still has no impact on the story, except for the fact that he just now exists earlier in the timeline than we previously thought. It's not like they suddenly changed Jango Fett's hair color to orange, naturally orange, and now they have to go into Attack of the Clones and digitally color his hair orange to make sure it's now canon compliant moving forward. It's not the same thing. Ki-Adi-Mundi's age and things along that sort, especially for background characters, are just small details that are thrown into reference books and stuff like that, and are not details that really matter for the overall narrative of this story being told, specifically with the Acolyte or with the story of Star Wars overall. Changing Ki-Adi-Mundi's age does not suddenly remove Jabba the Hutt from canon because they had a meeting once or whatever. It's like, oh well, if his age changed, it's like, no, that's now making someone younger. I think can do that. Making someone, especially for an alien race such as the Syrians or whatever, however you pronounce that, making them older. This is a non-issue. There is no issue here. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on the whole thing, because I'm sure that's everyone listening to this has probably seen that on the internet. It really is. It's not a big deal. So I could go on and on with more examples and stuff, but like I said, it doesn't really matter, and I've given it more lip service than it needs already. So yeah. Overall, this episode not the greatest. I think that really comes down a lot to the pacing of when these episodes are released. So. And even in a vacuum, without taking that into account, it's really just kind of fine at best, because it's really just a lot of setup for the next episode. So maybe retroactively, this episode will get a little better in my mind, depending on how the next episode turns out. But this show is still not the worst thing ever to be made in the history of ever, like some people think it is. It's just firmly okay for right now. It has its problems, but it has its bright spots as well. Because, I mean, at the very end, because it's like, oh, you're ending just when you're starting to get good. When the red blade wielder floats down in the background and he's out of focus. Oh, that was sick. I loved that. I mean, that is the kind of stuff that I want to be seeing more of. It's like, yes, do more things like that. Funny camera tricks, and it's like, make this villain scary. That was scary. That was unsettling, especially because he was out of focus. You couldn't really see him very well. So it's like, oh, where does he end? Where does he begin? What's with the, is he wearing a cape? It just looks so freaky and unnatural. And maybe, okay, so now that I'm discussing that, maybe that was the point of the bug scene, because they were trying to make, since he was in the background in the shadows, maybe the point was to try to make it seem like he's one of the bugs, and it followed him, and he followed them. But again, if that's the case, then they didn't convey that very poorly, because I just now thought about it. But anyway, regardless, that entrance was really cool, and then him just flinging Osha away with the little flick of his wrist, essentially, that was cool. And then like the quick head turn towards all the Jedi, very, very disturbing, very almost marionette puppet like, with how quick that was, very animalistic. So I'm very much looking forward to next episode, because hopefully we're going to be getting more of that, and we're going to be seeing how this guy fights and everything, and maybe learning the identity. But and that's going to be another thing. It's like that could like ruin the pacing of the whole show if they unveil his identity next episode, because that's like the thing that's probably keeping a lot of people engaged. So I feel like they want to keep that hidden for as long as possible, but we shall see. So anyway, yeah, so we'll see how it all turns out next week. So anyway, thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.